Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Halifax, where I thought a very thoughtful and very well-considered speech. I rise to use the opportunity of today's debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to initially raise some general points about the funding of Welsh police forces. Unlike Scotland and Northern Ireland, policing is not yet devolved to Wales. Whereas in Scotland and Northern Ireland, policing is funded via the usual Barnett allocations, Welsh police forces find themselves reliant upon a funding formula designed in Westminster for the 43 Welsh and English police forces. If policing was devolved to Wales and the usual Barnett allocations applied, Welsh police forces would benefit from an extra £25 million worth of investment per annum in policing services in my country, if the money, of course, was ring-fenced by the Welsh Government. The Wales and England formula has not been historically kind to Welsh policing. Dyfed-Powys, my police force, has already faced cuts of £13 million over recent years. This was one of the primary reasons, of course, for the very controversial loss of our dedicated police helicopter, and I will resist the temptation to re-raise those issues here today. The aborted funding formula review led by the previous minister last year would have led to a cut of £32 million from Welsh police forces funding, a further £7.9 million from Dyfed-Powys, a staggering 16% of its budget. The aborted formula aimed to concentrate on socio-economic data and general crime figures as criteria for determining funding allocations. These crude determinations cannot possibly reflect the true cost of policing rural areas like the ones I represent, and it's vital that the Minister, before he publishes his new formula for consultation, takes a broader view. Traditionally, due to Westminster underfunding, local residents in Dyfed-Powys have had to make a greater contribution for police services via the annual precept. It's a typical accounting trick whereby the burden for funding public services moved from general taxation onto local taxation. And with the Tory manifesto pledging not to increase income tax during this Parliament, then obviously the UK Government has to look at other forms of taxation to make up the numbers. This sort of fiscal strategy is, of course, completely regressive, and we've heard that point made by several honourable members during today's debate. There is no operational reason why policing is not devolved to Wales, and it is hugely disappointing that the last Wales Bill lacked the ambition to equalise powers between Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, not to mention cities like Manchester, where policing powers are being devolved. With all 4 Welsh Police Commissioners supporting devolution of policing and a clear financial dividend, it is clear that it is narrow ideology driving policy in Westminster as it relates to Welsh policing. May I now turn my attention to other points raised by Police Commissioners to me in relation to the area cost adjustment. And I pay tribute to the work of David Llewellyn, the Police Commissioner for Dyfed-Powys in my own area, and Arfon Jones, the Police Commissioner in North Wales Police, for all their hard work since their election the year before last or last year. The area cost adjustment factor the police force uses for calculating the police main grant is skewed in favour of areas in the south-east of England where costs of living and salaries are higher. While this may be necessary, it does not consider the higher costs incurred by rural police forces for providing services in rural areas. The Department for Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs itself published a report in 2014 outlining how the cost of service delivery in rural areas is higher than average. There is mention in this report of travel costs and travel downtime. Evidence shows that travel time for police forces in rural areas is 25 times longer than in metropolitan areas. The issues here concerns the size and shape of the areas some forces are required to police, and particularly the distance they must travel to deal with public safety and welfare and transport incidences. A point was made by the Honourable Member for Cornwall. Population in a small, compact police force centred on a single city will make less demands on travel time than one in a large, irregular police force area with multiple population foci. City of London Police serves a resident population of less than 8,000 people in 290 hectares. Dyfed-Powys Police, on the other hand, serves a resident population of over 500,000 people spread across over 1 million hectares of largely dispersed towns and villages. The UK Government report also outlines the difficulty of channel shift. As you will already have heard in countless speeches from Plaid Cymru members in this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, digital infrastructure is a major problem in our country. Too many of our communities are without broadband. Our police forces therefore need to rely on other ways to communicate with their service users, which are more time intensive. As an example, a call handler can deal with one voice caller at any one time, but may deal with several simultaneously using web chat. Another example I can make is the issue of holding cells. Due to its geographical territory, Dyfed-Powys needs 3 holding cell units within our area, and these must be manned simultaneously and at a 24-hour basis. Obviously, that is more expensive than a police force that has one central holding unit. And I can go on and make several other examples. The area cost adjustment factor for the City of London is 1.52. The area cost adjustment factor for Dyfed-Powys, on the other hand, is less than 1. I would urge the Minister to review the factors which determine the area cost adjustment to take into account the unique and often more difficult circumstances our rural police forces face. If I may now turn my attention to the national and international capital city grant. It is difficult to conceive of a simple police grant formula that can encompass such a range of circumstances. Indeed, the specific needs of the City of London and metropolitan police forces have long been recognised, primarily through the national and international capital city grant. Cardiff is also a capital city and does not receive this grant. What consideration, therefore, has the Minister given to awarding Wales with a proportion of the national and international capital city grant to adequately address the unique challenges the police forces face in the capital city of my country? I'd like to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, by saying that when it comes to the funding of police services in my country, the devolution of policing to Wales is a political and financial no-brainer. And I would finish by saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is probably the only time you will ever hear me in this House saying something positive about the Barnett formula.